You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Tuesday. We are back at it again. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group, and we do not have the special guest that I had promised-ish. Excuse me, unfortunately, he was unreachable, so we will try to get that person. That's why I didn't name names. We'll try to get that person either next week or during the bye week. But tomorrow, I do want to know, we will do our Pro Football Focus thing that we have been doing. Tomorrow, we will have Austin Gale. Yeah, that's right. We're going head honcho, essentially, with that. So, should be some interesting things. We'll talk about, obviously, Michigan. We'll talk about Wisconsin, what he's seen from them. We'll also talk about Rutgers because I, again, want to continue to dispel this notion that Rutgers is some trash team. So I think that's an important conversation to have. We'll see if he feels the same as Anthony Treach did about the Michigan-Wisconsin game. That'll be super interesting. Anyhow, I want to start out today. Well, before we even start out today, this is actually take 2 of the podcast because Michigan got a big commitment today in Kenneth Grant, the Merrillville, Indiana 4-star, depending on what service you look at. He chose Michigan over Ohio State, Wisconsin, so that is big. I believe he's the teammate of Drake Bowen, the 5-star linebacker from 2023. So that's that's obviously all good stuff. So anyway, we're not going to talk too much about that. I mean, that's gonna be it. Just if you didn't know, now you know. By the time that this comes out, especially on video, because it takes like 3 hours to upload, sometimes longer, then everyone will have a pretty clear idea of what's going on. But we're not going to talk about that. But big win for Michigan. Lots of bulk in the middle. 330 pounds. I mean, he's a 6'4". I feel like Alan True compared him to Jonathan Hankins. I mean, he's going to be a beast. He's going to be an absolute beast for Michigan. So that's the exact type of player that you want, and considering that Mason Graham at the Boise State flip, yeah, he's a 3-star, but people who have watched him play say he's dominant on both sides of the ball, like as he plays offensive line and defensive line, that he might be the best lineman in the state of California, a state that just produces players a lot. So even though Michigan's taking a flyer, I feel like on some of these guys, it feels like it feels like a lot of them are really working out. We'll make all of segment 1 recruiting since we're on it. Then we'll get to the other stuff. But let's just take a look at the recruiting list here. Obviously, you've got 1 5-star committed in Will Johnson. And I really think that especially if Michigan can keep winning, if Michigan can win at Wisconsin, and Alabama's going to keep winning as well, and that's the other school in the mix for Damani Jackson. But I mean, like I said, if I had a crystal ball, still, I would put one in for Damani Jackson to flip to Michigan, just based off of my conversation with his dad, which you can still go and find and read on Wolverines Wire if you're so inclined. But I think Michigan really blew him away with the Washington game. Don't think he recognized that college football looked like that coming from Pac-12 country, But I mean, he's also not originally from California, so there's not like a childhood affinity for the Trojans. And obviously, it doesn't help that USC loses to Oregon State. That's not the type of game that USC should lose. That's like, Michigan losing to Purdue. You're not supposed to do that. It'll happen every now and again, but considering they just fired their coach and there's all that, we'll see on Walter Nolan. I'm going to touch on Walter Nolan in a bit here, but I mean, there's obviously the obvious guys that are expected to be really good. Tyler Morris, the former teammate of J.J. McCarthy. Obviously, they already have a connection before J.J. transferred to IMG Academy. Mario Eugenio, Cody Jones. Those are your blue chippers. Tayshaun Trent's really good. I think I've seen him in a 7-on-7 before. some of them are 4 stars in some places and not in others, like Kenneth Grant, like Miles Pollard, like Jaden Denegal, or like Colston Loveland, I think is technically a 4-star at like Rivals. So, I mean, but that's the thing, right? Like Miles Pollard is a 3-star, and like who are his offers from? His offers are from like top end, Auburn, Oklahoma, Alabama. When you have an offer from Alabama and you're a corner, I mean, really any of these SEC schools, I mean, you're doing pretty good, right? I mean, LSU's the other one you're usually looking for. Doesn't have one of those, but Penn State, Tennessee, I mean, he's got everything, and yet he's still a 3-star, right? That's just weird. Colston Loveland is another guy who's got an Alabama offer, right? And we've seen how some of their tight ends end up being. It seems like when you look at some of these guys, like Mason Graham, who I just mentioned, or Alessandro Lorenzetti, who just hasn't really been super recruited yet because he came from Canada and now he's down in at Loomis Chaffee School in Connecticut. It's not exactly like the type of place where you've got scouts going to all the time, from the recruiting services. Michigan obviously wanted Connor Jones in the worst way for a long while, and he had been on campus a bunch of times. I had talked to him, I believe, like after the barbecue like a couple years ago, I think. Deuce Spurlock is another guy that just committed last week, and this week rather, earlier this week, 2 days ago. That's how quickly this goes. But a guy from Alabama's got an Auburn offer, decides to, after visiting Michigan, to stay up north. I think that they, like a lot of these guys that are 3-stars, and a lot of them aren't rated. Those are the types of guys, though, where I'm kind of like, they're just being under-evaluated in a lot of ways. I think Michigan's doing really good with the types of guys they're getting. Cavante Henry, like I've also heard some good things about him coming out of Lawndale, California. So I think that they're doing a good job with a lot of these. And when you consider that you can add a couple more blue chip type guys that are going to decide a little bit later, obviously you think about Deion Walker. He's certainly a guy you would expect to end up at Michigan. Josh Connerly is a guy who is crystal balled to Michigan. I still wouldn't be surprised about Oscar Delp. I know people say Georgia. I think the biggest impediment for Michigan is that they already have 2 tight ends committed. And we'll see. Like I know the Austin Osbury really liked his visit to Ann Arbor. I spoke to him. You can read that again on Wolverines Wire. So there's still a lot of like 4-star type guys that Michigan's in for, and we'll see with the quarterback situation. Jaden Denegal just had his official visit this last week, but Justin Martin just decommitted from Cal, and Michigan's supposedly in contact with him already. So we'll see if there's some movement there. Altogether, this isn't going to end up being a super highly rated class unless they get all of the 5 stars. I don't expect that, but right now, I mean, it certainly looks like they could finish with 3, which is the most in the Harbaugh era. So I think that would be big. Looking at where Michigan ranks in the team rankings, it's 15th right now. I don't think that's with, I don't believe that's with, that's not with, what's his name? Kenneth Grant included yet. So they'll move up, but I expect them to be probably about a top 10, 15 type class. Maybe they'll sneak into that top 10 if they do flip Damani, if they do get Josh Connerly, like it looks like they will. And certainly there's the potential that Walter Nolan, especially if Michigan, keep winning. But speaking of things Tennessee, we've got something else to talk about here momentarily. But before we do, all right, college football fanatics, have you heard about Prize Picks? Prize Picks is a daily fantasy made easy. I love this. I know you will too. Prize Picks offers every sport you can think of, like NFL, college football, NBA, college basketball, MLB, soccer, MMA, and more. Prize Picks offers more college football props than anyone in the world and offers the star players of the Power 5 as well as mid-major players you might not have even ever heard of. Prize Picks offers any prop you can think of, from yardage to touchdowns, even interceptions thrown. If you deposit and use the promo code LOCKEDON, you get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. You can pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times in any entry. And it's just you versus the projected numbers. PrizePicks allows mixed sports entries as well. That means you can take the over on LeBron combined with the under on Mahomes in the same entry. Use the award-winning app on both the App Store, the Apple App Store, and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy. PrizePicks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. So don't hesitate. Check out PrizePicks.com. Go to your App Store. Download it today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Also, RockAuto.com is a family business. They've been serving auto parts customers online for 20 years. Go to RockAuto.com to shop for auto and body parts from hundreds of manufacturers. They have everything from engine control modules to brake parts to tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. Whether it's for your classic or daily driver, get everything you need in a few easy clicks delivered directly to your door. Now, I've used Rock Auto plenty of times. It saved me thousands when I had my POS Cadillac. So I vouch for this and how the ease of use, how much money it can save you. And the good thing is RockAuto.com catalog, it's unique, remarkably easy to navigate, quickly see all the parts available for your vehicles, use the brand specifications and the prices you prefer. Best of all, prices at RockAuto.com are always reliably low and the same for professionals and for do-it-yourselfers, so why spend twice as much for the same parts? Go to RockAuto.com right now, see all the parts available for your car or truck, right locked on in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need, RockAuto.com. All right. So, interesting thing coming from a friend of mine, Mike Wilson, who covers Tennessee. He was down there in Knoxville for the quarterback club, which for those of you up here, it seems very similar to going to like the Alumni Association M Club events, particularly M Club Ann Arbor. Now, I've never been to Ann Arbor. I was a member of the Greater Detroit. Was a board member, and I stopped going because I got too busy with season stuff. Anyhow, so it's at this event. Brian Jean-Marie is the special guest, right? And that's why I differentiate. Like the M Club Ann Arbor tends to have Jim Harbaugh or coaches, and at least they did. I don't know if they still do. And but they have Brian Jean-Marie, and I'm sure you've heard this story by now, but I think it's worth touching on. So he's asked by the moderator. I'm giving you the clarity because I talked to Mike about this last night after he wrote the article. And Brian Jean-Marie says, and of course I pulled the window down. I had it up and I pulled it down. But anyway, he says, hey, this is a tennis crowd. Michigan's a tennis crowd. He's asked, like, what's the difference between Tennessee and Michigan as far as the crowds? And he's like, it's a tennis crowd at Michigan. And here it's like more of a gladiator thing because the stands are built on top of each other. Michigan, it differentiates, says Michigan's a bowl. Sound is, goes up and goes out. Here's my issue with it. Unless Brian Jean-Marie at some point in his life came to Michigan Stadium as a fan, he has no idea firsthand, especially not as a coach at Michigan. Because what year did he coach at Michigan? 2020. What wasn't there in Michigan Stadium? There were no fans. Like there were parents, I think, for the first game. I don't think there were. Maybe there were for the Wisconsin game. I don't think so. I think by that point it was empty, but there were no fans. So listen, he's not wrong, right? So we've spent plenty of times on this show talking about fans in the stands and why Michigan Stadium isn't a hostile environment the way it should be. And people can sit there and say, well, the sound and, whatever. But like I've told you, that I've fell prey to the down in front, before 2013 Ohio State game. I'm sitting in the end zone. Ohio State's backed up in the end zone. I'm up yelling. Lady behind me, be quiet and sit down. I was talking to a fellow photographer who has season tickets that they obviously don't use because she's a photographer, but she said that a couple of years ago, and I think it was like 5-10 years ago, she went to a game and someone had a row like to themselves pretty much. And they were sitting there reading a book and then turned around and said, hey, can everyone be quiet? I'm trying to read. That seems pretty Michigan-like, but The difference is Brian Jean-Marie cannot speak as an authority on this issue. And I had in this conversation with Mike, and he isn't dispelling it. He said, well, the moderator asked him that question. It's not like he just brought it up, but he said, I don't think the moderator would have known about recruiting things. But I think it's an interesting thing to say when Tennessee is trying to keep Walter Nolan home. And trying to keep Walter Nolan home in Michigan. He just went and visited Michigan, and it looked like Michigan had a great visit, or had a great visit at Michigan. The thing is for me, it's one of those things like, okay, there's a couple of things. It could have been that. Could have been he just did not think that there was any way what he was going to say was going to leak out, and he just wanted to placate the Tennessee fans that were there by saying, like, yeah, Michigan's got the biggest stadium, and I coached there, but, you guys are better. But, for those who are like, well, he's not wrong, it's like, but coaches generally do not say things that could, like, publicly that aren't fodder of one way, shape, or form, right? Either they're just going to, like, it's going to be like we see this with Michigan a lot now, straight belief in the team. What are the issues with the team right now? Issues is that we just care too much, like they're not going to say anything like, yeah, this is our deficiency here, this is our deficiency there. We've seen that happen. Mike Zordich did that a few years ago. But certainly they don't tend to talk about other teams. If I had asked, or let's say, I don't even remember who we have in press conference tomorrow, but like let's just say like a guy like Sharon Moore, like I could ask him like, what was it like coaching at Central, or Josh Gaddis, like what's the difference between coaching at in Alabama and coaching here? He would praise both of them. They would praise Michigan and then be like, I can't really speak. I'm not really going to speak about the other thing. So the fact that he talked about it, it's not like he's like, you know what, I'm going to say something because it needs to be said because these Michigan fans need to learn to stand up and cheer louder. This is a deeply held belief that I have. No, he's not doing that. So there has to be a motivation, either naivety or motivation, that made him decide that he was going to say these things. And, I mean, he didn't leave on, like, if he left on bad terms, it was his own volition, right? Because Michigan wanted to retain him. It wasn't like, Michigan was like, see ya. Like, I could understand if, like, Zordich or Don Brown or Ed Warner, any of those guys were like, you know what, I'm going to say something about Michigan because I'm still mad at them, right? Michigan wanted to keep Brian Jean-Marie. But, again, it doesn't matter if he's right. He has never coached in a game at Michigan Stadium with fans in it. So it's just ridiculous in my eyes that he'd even go there, right? Because how easy would it be for him to be like, well, the thing is yeah, I can't really make that comparison because I coached in the COVID year, and I know you guys had fans down here, but up in the Big Ten, we didn't have fans in the stands. Easy out. Instead, he decided, nope, I woke up and I chose violence. Anyway, it's not a big deal. It's one of those things where it's fun, but it feels like it could have some recruiting ramifications. It tends that when coaches say things like that, when they do take pot shots, like back in the day when Jim Harbaugh used to actually call out Georgia coach or, Mark D'Antonio, glad you're feeling better, buddy, type thing. It's usually with a reason, and it usually has some kind of recruiting tie-in. So I don't know. It's weird. Anyhow, all right. Well, let's finish out talking about this Michigan-Wisconsin matchup because I'm still really leery. I still think I'm gonna whoever I pick to win. It's really a coin flip for me at this point. I'm gonna pick them to win by 3 points or less. Really, probably a point, because I think that it's daunting for me to pick Michigan when they haven't won in Madison since 2001. Wisconsin has not looked that good. Back is against the wall, but the problem is Michigan exposed a little bit of themselves. And I think the thing that scares me is what happens if they try to run into a brick wall? Do they keep on doing what they did against Rutgers, which is not change things up, at least not fast enough? So, anyhow. All right, we're back and better than ever. All eyes are on the gridirons. Teams are back to start yet another football season. We are a third of the way through the season, if you can believe it or not. As always, BetOnline.ag is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. With new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, BetOnline.ag continues to be the number one source for everything football. Head over to BetOnline.ag, sign up today, receive your 100% welcome bonus. That's double your initial deposit for signing up. Don't forget to use the promo code LOCKEDON. From football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, let's finish out. So, some interesting comments. We have Trent New put up a what they said piece, and I also put up another thing from Jim Leonard that he would talk to Adam Rittenberg from ESPN, and I extrapolated kind of a quote that didn't have to do with the main piece, but it has to do with the game, of course. And I think the interesting thing that Jim Leonard said about Michigan is because right now there's a feeling, and there's an excellent piece from Nick Baumgardner on The Athletic that talks about like what Michigan is and what Michigan isn't, from what we can tell at this point. And he doesn't think that highly yet of Cade McNamara. And I again, as someone who's watched all these games, can he be more than a game manager? Yes. Has he been asked to be? No. Right? But Jim Leonard from Wisconsin says that he thinks that Michigan's plenty fine passing the ball. They just have chosen not to because the run game's worked. And that he believes that they have complete faith in the passing game and they need to be ready for it. Paul Chris says that he thinks that Michigan's going to make them play a little bit more honest football. He's seen this as a good team that in all phases so far. I mean, that's coach speak, right? I asked Jim Harbaugh. I seem to be the one every week. That's my one question every week of Jim Harbaugh in the Monday press conference. What have you seen from the opposing team? Because I always know I'm going to write about it, so I might as well ask it, straight away in case it's a weird week where someone doesn't ask it. And but like even again when I asked about like Northern Illinois, it's like, oh, they're great in all three phases. Like that's coach speak to some degree. But I think that it's interesting hearing the defensive coordinator from Wisconsin, and you keep in mind Wisconsin's got the number 2 defense, number 1 rush defense. So it's a good defense. It's just a bad offense. But here's where I get leery still with this game. It's a lot of mistakes from Graham Mertz. He's been bad. And it's like, what happens now that it's like they always beat Michigan and Madison? What happens if they play a complete game or they find, the good news is they don't have the elixir to Mike McDonald's defense as they did Don Brown's. So I don't think that Wisconsin's nearly as good offensively as it had been. There's no Jonathan Taylor to worry about. Ches Malusi's very good. I'm not saying that, but he's not Jonathan Taylor. And like all this talk, like, oh, they just plug in guys. It's like, that's true to some point, but at some point you're going to have the best guy and the next guy isn't going to be as good. And Jonathan Taylor only had one good game against Michigan, which was 2019. So, right now, Graham Mertz has looked really bad. He's thrown something like 1 touchdown and 8 interceptions. He's the worst rated quarterback in the league right now. And that doesn't bode well. It's for them, especially because he's a 5-star, right? So I don't know exactly what to expect because it's one of those things. What if they put together a complete game? And it's the same thing I think about with Nebraska because having seen, I think, 3 of Nebraska's 5 games, Nebraska is a team that, I know we're looking ahead here, but it's a team where it's right there, right? But they're 2 and 3, so I can't rate them any higher in my power rankings than I do, really. And I actually rose them up, but they've only lost by a score every game. Wisconsin lost by 8 in week 1, and then they inexplicably gave up 28 points in the fourth quarter to lose by 25. So, it seems like it's mistakes and execution. The good news is Michigan isn't really making big mistakes. That the tackling this last week was troubling. Obviously, the offense is troubling, but the good news is they did it against Rutgers. It wasn't like they did against Wisconsin. They were like, ooh, yeah, we've got some problems to work on. Now they have the thing that you have to wonder is how much does Michigan self-scout, which they've said that they self-scout, right? They've made a big point. We self-scout, not just the players, but the coaches and decisions we make. We're going to find out a lot about what Michigan's capable of against Wisconsin. It's going to tell us, despite what Wisconsin may or may not be, it's going to tell us everything we need to know about what Michigan is going to do. And this is a situation, I talked to my best friend earlier today, and I said, this is a game where I wouldn't be surprised if any of the 4 possible outcomes happen, which is close win, close loss, blowout win, blowout loss. I would not be surprised if any of the above happen. And when you look at execution, Michigan's still ranked number 1 in the conference, number 3 in the country, according to Pro Football Focus. So overall, they're still doing really good. The number 6 offense, or number 8 offense, number 6 defense, I think, according to Pro Football Focus, in the country. And not the top offense in the league. That belongs to Ohio State, then Maryland, then Michigan. But no, the number 3 offense in the Big Ten, and the number 1 defense in the Big Ten right now. So, which surprisingly, Wisconsin's defense didn't grade higher, but I guess, it happens. And, again, Pro Football Focus is all about execution. It's not predictive like FPI or SP+. So we'll see. I still think it's a daunting task, especially because we don't know. We've seen Michigan be different at home and on the road, particularly in road games in hostile environments. Michigan's won 1 road game in a hostile environment in Jim Harbaugh's tenure, and that was 2015 Penn State. And yeah, they came close. They should have won. They should have won Iowa. They should have won Ohio State in 2016. They didn't. Should have won Penn State in 2019. They didn't. So we just have to see. But when they go to Maryland, when they go to Rutgers, except for last year, they tend to be pretty good on the road still. But when they're facing a team it's maybe not supposed to beat, it tends not to. On the road, at home, it's, aside from last year, there's only 2 teams that have given Michigan trouble at home. So we'll see. Anyway, that's going to do it for us today. Again, tomorrow, Austin Gale from Pro Football Focus joins us. That show will be released sometime in the morning, at least audio. Probably take a little while for video. But nonetheless, that'll be up tomorrow, probably late morning, early afternoon, sometime before the press conference. But anyhow, that'll do it for us today. We'll talk to you then. Thank you for listening and or watching. Peace.